My name is Luis Delgado. I'm 43, a Filipino-American entrepreneur based in Silicon Valley. I built my first million before 30, owned 2 companies, flew private, gave TED Talks. People called me visionary, self-made, unstoppable. I thought I was living the dream, but no one knew I hadn't slept a full night in years. No one knew my soul was slowly bleeding behind the success. I died at 10:47 a.m. on a clear Thursday morning. A helicopter crash over Big Sur, California. We were flying low. I had a speaking engagement in Santa Barbara, a meeting in LA, and a podcast appearance by noon. My pilot warned me, "Visibility's dropping, sir. Maybe we turn back." But I didn't even look up. I was texting a venture capitalist, smiling, planning, and then pop, grind, alarms. I heard her scream, "We're going down." I reached for the belt, but I never made it. The world flipped, sky became ground, trees rushed at us like spears, and then black. But it wasn't unconsciousness. It wasn't sleep. It was absence. No body, no breath, no time, only awareness. I wasn't in pain. I wasn't afraid. I was just gone, and yet fully present. Then, a presence. Not outside me, through me. A voice not loud but unescapable. "Luis, you were rich on earth. But were you ever rich in the spirit?" The question didn't pierce me. It unwrapped me. Suddenly I saw myself, but not my body, my history, my hunger, my heart. My entire life peeled open like pages in a book I had never dared to read. The book wasn't condemning. It was clarifying. I saw every moment I chose speed over stillness, achievement over alignment, applause over obedience. I thought I had built a kingdom, but I was standing in its ruins. And they weren't made of bricks. They were made of pride. Then, something shifted. The atmosphere thickened. It wasn't fog or air. It was presence. Warm, holy, heavy, like the air before a storm. But instead of fear, it carried love. Then it spoke again. "You thought success made you safe, but it only made you silent." Tears didn't fall, but I wept in the way only a soul can weep, when it realizes it lived a lie that looked like a life. I saw every podcast I spoke on, every post I made, every inspirational quote I shared, and then silence again, but not empty silence, sacred silence, the kind that crushes the noise you didn't know you were addicted to. I whispered, or thought, "Am I dead?" But the answer didn't come in words. It came in knowing. Yes, and yet this was not the end. It was the beginning of everything I was too afraid to face. Because in the next breath, I saw him, not a man in a robe, not a statue or painting, but the essence of truth, light, mercy, and majesty all at once. Jesus didn't enter the space. He became the space. I didn't fall to my knees, I collapsed inside. Because nothing false could stand before him. And he came closer. "You had millions of followers, but you never followed." Then everything I built, my businesses, my brand, my name began to flicker like holograms. None of it lasted. And yet, he stayed. Not to shame me, but to show me who I truly was and who I was meant to become. After that stillness, something in the atmosphere shifted. I wasn't falling anymore. I was hovering. And in a way I can't explain, I saw the earth. First, the crash site. My body twisted in metal, lifeless. Paramedics rushing, my assistant screaming. News alerts already flashing across devices. Tech CEO Luis Delgado presumed dead. But none of it touched me. I wasn't afraid. I was detached, like I had stepped out of a costume I'd worn too long. Then my vision expanded. I saw my office in San Francisco, my companies running, emails being answered, my cracked phone still buzzing, my entire empire moving on without me. And that's when Jesus spoke again. You built platforms to project power, but you never asked if they carried my purpose. Suddenly, I saw my own content. Keynotes, podcasts, motivational quotes I'd posted, thousands of likes, comments calling me brilliant, world changer, even prophetic. But in this realm, the praise looked like smoke, shallow, weightless fading. Jesus let me feel it, and I knew I had inspired minds but never nourished souls. You inspired them to chase success but not surrender. You gave them strategy but not stillness. Then you peeled another layer. I saw the modern church not as a building but as a movement. Conferences, worship concerts, live streams, but they looked empty. Pastors were speaking, but I couldn't hear a word. Their voices had no weight, no presence. I asked, why can't I hear them? Because they preach without fire. They echo trends, but they do not burn with truth. I saw churches full of lights, smoke machines branding but no altars, no repentance, no one weeping, no trembling before God. I saw a generation running toward relevance but away from reverence. And I realized I had funded this. I had written checks, partnered with ministries, all while ignoring the one question that mattered. Is God here? You gave to ease your guilt, not to obey my whisper. Then he showed me something that shattered me. A small home in Pampanga, a grandmother kneeling beside her bed. No lights, no cameras, just her whispering prayers, long, slow, broken prayers for her grandchildren, her church, her country. And in the spirit realm, those prayers were like fire burning brighter than all of the conferences and sermons I'd seen. She carries more weight in the spirit than half of Congress. She moves heaven not with volume, but with surrender. I had spent years chasing metric growth, engagement, ROI. And here was a woman with no audience, shaking nations with her hidden life. I saw every deal I'd closed, every stage I stood on, every viral clip. And for the first time, they all looked like sandcastles built at low tide. I whispered, so what matters now? Jesus turned to me and his eyes like oceans of fire met mine. Love that costs you, obedience that makes no sense, and prayers whispered when no one is watching. That is what shakes eternity. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe, not because of fear, but because of clarity. I had lived a successful lie, and now the truth was setting me free, piece by painful piece. But it wasn't over. Jesus was just getting started, because next, he would show me two names, Elon, Trump, and why their roles weren't political but prophetic. Jesus turned to me again, steady, unwavering. He didn't need to speak loudly. His presence already carried authority. And then, in the silence, two names appeared before me, like glowing symbols suspended in light, Elon and Trump. I stared, confused. What did they have to do with me, with heaven, with this moment between life and death? Jesus let the question linger inside me, then answered not with judgment, but revelation. They disturb systems, and you worship systems more than you pursued truth. The words struck deep. I had admired disruption in the business world, praised innovation, obsessed over systems and scaling, but I had never asked whether God was behind them. Then a vision opened. I saw Elon Musk, not the media icon, but a man alone in a quiet room filled with prototypes, broken devices, handwritten notes. He was still staring into space as if waiting for something he couldn't name. I felt his mind racing, but not in rebellion, in longing. His eyes were searching for truth buried under logic. His curiosity is a key. He asks the questions most people avoid. He hasn't found me yet, but I am closer than he realizes. I saw heavenly beings near him, not with wings, but with purpose. They watched over him, quiet and intentional. Then I saw shadows, confusion, fatigue, ambition pressing close, not to destroy him, but to dull him, to make him settle for brilliance without meaning. A moment will come, a dream, a divine interruption. Pray that he hears it. Then came the second name, Trump. As soon as it appeared, the atmosphere thickened. I expected political noise, anger, division. Instead, stillness. Then a thunderous voice. You see a man, I see a mirror. And suddenly I saw it too. Not just Trump, but a nation torn in half. He stood between two crashing waves. Deception on one side, pride on the other. And he wasn't graceful. He wasn't eloquent. But he stood while others bowed. I did not place him for applause, but for exposure. His role is not to lead perfectly, but to reveal what has been hidden. I saw spiritual warfare around him, voices, not only lying to him, but about him. People turned against one another, in his name forgetting their shared mission. Churches split, families divided, social media ignited like wildfire. Some idolize him, others despise him. Both are wrong. He is not the answer, he is a door. I saw America stretch across a tightrope. Below was chaos, fear, decay. Above, glory, revival, awakening. But the rope was fraying in the middle. I asked, can this nation be saved? Jesus turned toward the earth with a fire in his gaze. It depends on what my people choose. Choose to see beyond headlines. Choose to kneel instead of shout. Choose to pray like the future depends on it, because it does. Then I saw certain states begin to glow, Texas, Florida, parts of Ohio, and Tennessee. Not because of politics, but because of prayer. Small faithful groups were holding the line. I also saw darkened cities where churches chased crowds but lost the spirit, where truth was replaced with trends and no one noticed. And above it all appeared three words: consecration, conviction, courage. The future will not be secured by elections. It will be secured by altars. I felt the weight of that sentence settle in my spirit like an anchor. This wasn't about Elon. It wasn't about Trump. It wasn't even about America. It was about me and what I had allowed to distract me from what matters. I had lived for movement, for growth, for recognition. But Jesus was calling me back to something far more dangerous, far more beautiful, to follow, to speak, to awaken. As the vision of Elon and Trump dissolved into light, I thought the revelation was over. But Jesus was not finished. The air around me thickened as if the next scene carried the weight of a nation. Then, without warning, I was suspended in the sky, neither standing nor floating, just aware. In front of me was the United States of America, but not as a political map or set of borders. It appeared as a body stretched out across a single fraying rope that spanned up over a bottomless canyon. The rope swayed slightly under pressure. Below was darkness, social unrest, economic collapse, hatred, fear, confusion, addiction, and apathy all tangled together in a storm. Above, there was light, pure, warm, alive. It looked like heaven's design waiting to be fulfilled. Healing, unity, revival, and justice moving like waves. But between those two realms, the nation balanced, trembling. I asked, what is holding her? And instantly, I saw them. Small lights, millions of them hidden in homes, back rooms, hospital chapels, prison cells, and basement churches. These weren't politicians, influencers, or celebrities. They were intercessors, unseen warriors, praying parents, weeping pastors, fasting students, men and women who weren't famous on earth but carried weight in heaven. They were the rope's reinforcement holding the soul of a nation between collapse and glory. She is not held by her systems. She is not sustained by her politics. She is suspended by my mercy and by those who still remember me. As he spoke, I saw certain cities pulse like living hearts. Austin, Nashville, Columbus, parts of Miami. Not because of political values, but because as the vision of Elon and Trump dissolved into light, I thought the revelation was over. But Jesus was not finished. The air around me thickened as if the next scene carried the weight of a nation. Then, without warning, I was suspended in the sky, neither standing nor floating, just aware. In front of me was the United States of America, but not as a political map or set of borders. It appeared as a body stretched out across a single fraying rope that spanned up over a bottomless canyon. The rope swayed slightly under pressure. Below was darkness, social unrest, economic collapse, hatred, fear, confusion, addiction, and apathy all tangled together in a storm. Above, there was light, pure, warm, alive. It looked like heaven's design waiting to be fulfilled, healing, unity, revival, and justice moving like waves. But between those two realms, the nation balanced, trembling. I asked, what is holding her? And instantly, I saw them. Small lights, millions of them hidden in homes, back rooms, hospital chapels, prison cells, and basement churches. These weren't politicians, influencers, or celebrities. They were intercessors, unseen warriors, praying parents, weeping pastors, fasting students, men and women who weren't famous on earth but carried weight in heaven. They were the rope's reinforcement holding the soul of a nation between collapse and glory. She is not held by her systems. She is not sustained by her politics. She is suspended by my mercy and by those who still remember me. As he spoke, I saw certain cities pulse like living hearts. Austin, Nashville, Columbus, parts of Miami. Not because of political values, but because there were gatherings of people who still worshipped in truth, who still preached repentance, who still knelt. But I also saw places fading into gray once, strongholds of revival now overtaken by pride, performance, and fear. Churches that once carried fires now carried fog machines. Pastors who once wept now performed. Congregations traded their altars for slogans, their hunger for relevance. My presence was their power, but when they lost my presence, they became noise. The nation does not need louder voices. It needs purer ones. Then came the fog. I saw it creeping slowly into every space: entertainment, news, education, even pulpits. It wasn't demonic in appearance. It was subtle, cultural, comfortable. It wrapped itself in logic and tolerance, and slowly it numbed the conscience of a generation. People weren't being silenced with violence. They were being drowned in distraction. I saw Christians arguing over politics, but forgetting how to pray. I saw churches obsessed with metrics, but void of miracles. I saw believers scrolling endlessly, chasing validation, numbing their minds, forgetting their spirits. I turned to Jesus, deeply grieved, and asked, why is this fog so effective? Because it doesn't try to destroy my people. It only has to distract them. The enemy knows if they forget they are spirit, they will live as slaves. Slaves to fear, slaves to urgency, slaves to opinions. Then I saw something I will never forget, a new kind of remnant rising. Not loud, not flashy, not platform-driven. They were focused fasting, not just from food, but from noise. These were men and women who had deleted apps, turned off devices, and rediscovered the sound of silence. They woke before dawn, not to hustle but to listen. They opened Bibles instead of dashboards. They lit candles instead of chasing content. And in the spirit realm, they burned like torches in the night. Jesus watched them closely, and for the first time in the vision, he smiled with holy joy. These are my hidden ones. They will never trend. but they will transform. They are building altars, not brands. They are shaping futures while the world chases fame. Suddenly, I saw children joining them, little ones, teenagers, kneeling next to their beds, praying over their schools, laying hands on maps and nations. I saw one boy, maybe 10, whisper, "God, make my school a place where..." After the scroll vanished, the atmosphere changed again. I didn't move yet. I was transported into another layer of vision. This time, I was no longer looking at nations or cities. I was looking at minds. I saw people across the world, entrepreneurs, influencers, creatives, all locked in the same invisible battle. Some were at desks, some on stages, some in co-working spaces. They all looked productive, powerful even. But in the spirit, they were tired, disoriented, numb. Not because they were lazy, but because they were distracted. I saw them scrolling, performing, pitching. But their spirits were quiet, empty, disengaged. They didn't even know they were under attack because the enemy wasn't using obvious weapons. He was using noise, noise wrapped in productivity, noise disguised as purpose. And it was stealing something priceless: stillness, clarity, and conviction. This is not a war of flesh, it is a war of perception. The enemy does not fear movement, he fears awareness. The battle is not always about sin. Sometimes it's about noise. I felt every word press into me. Then I saw my past self giving talks on focus while secretly living addicted to motion. I had been preaching discipline while feeding distraction. I saw business leaders chasing growth but losing their peace. I saw churches led like companies, and companies that carried more of God's presence than some pulpits. Then Jesus showed me one man, unknown, quiet, running a small business in Ohio. He prayed for every employee, hired ex-prisoners, funded orphanages in secret. No one noticed, but heaven did. An angel was standing beside him, writing every act of obedience in a glowing ledger. This is what kingship looks like. Not fame, but faithfulness. Not scaling, but surrender. Business is not separate from the sacred, it was always meant to be ministry. I saw dozens more like him, women running wellness startups, men managing logistics firms, teenagers building ethical code for apps. They were praying before product launches, fasting before client meetings. Their businesses weren't just functional, they were consecrated. Then I saw another group, larger, wealthy, influential, Christian, entitled, generous on paper. But in the spirit, they were chained. Their wealth gleamed, but their hearts were cold. They gave, but only for tax breaks. They tithed, but only when it benefited their brand. They sang worship songs, but they never surrendered their plans. Many believe they are blessed, but their hearts were never truly mine. They fund what is safe, not what is sacred. They build platforms, not altars. And then he showed me something that wrecked me. A storage room in heaven filled with blueprints. Ideas never launched. Technologies never built. Innovations aborted, not because of lack of money, but because of fear. Fear of irrelevance. Fear of loss. Fear of man. I asked, why so many? And he answered with a fire I hadn't felt before. Because they forgot the first investment I asked for was not money but surrender. Then he looked at me straight through me. Luis, you were called to fund the revival, but you chose applause. You feared becoming irrelevant, so you chased recognition. That loss is greater than any financial one you feared. I collapsed in spirit, not from guilt but from truth. I remembered every deal I pushed too far. Every strategy meeting I skipped prayer for. I whispered, can it be redeemed? He knelt beside me, eyes full of love and fierce mercy. You died not to be buried, but to be recommissioned. If you return, return, not to rebuild your brand, but to build my kingdom. The world doesn't need another billionaire. It needs a broken man made whole. And I wept because for the first time in my life, success felt small. Not worthless, just redefined. Then Jesus showed me a table, a round one, diverse faces around it, a teacher, a CEO, a former addict, a scientist, a young pastor. They weren't competing, they were listening. They weren't building empires, they were building eternity. Innovation without morality becomes manipulation. Profit without people becomes collapse. Influence without intercession becomes corruption. Tell them their gifts are not theirs. They are tools. And tools only work in surrendered hands. Then he showed me systems. AI, medicine, education, energy, all infused with heaven's values. Not religious, not political, redeemed. A vision of what's possible if builders rise, if kings awaken, if business bows to the blueprint of heaven. The next vision did not begin with a voice, but with design. I found myself standing in the middle of a city unlike any I had ever seen. It pulsed with light, not artificial, but alive like the buildings themselves were breathing with purpose. There were no billboards, no competing messages, no sirens of consumerism. Instead, every structure seemed built with both beauty and integrity. Hospitals were filled with peace, not panic. Schools radiated wisdom, not indoctrination. Businesses operated with transparency, generosity, and prayer. It was not a religious city. It was a redeemed one. Jesus stood beside me watching it all. This is not utopia. This is alignment. This is what happens when heaven is not just sung about, but built into systems. I saw policies crafted through prayer, energy powered by innovation wrapped in humility. I saw AI, agriculture, media, and medicine working together not to dominate but to serve. And at the center of it all, not a president, not a pastor, but a family. A mother and father praying over a meal. Children listening. A home glowing like a sanctuary. And just like that, the vision shifted. I was no longer in a city. I was in a child's bedroom. The walls were glowing with digital light. 4 screens flickered. A young boy, maybe 9, sat cross-legged on his bed, as glassy expression blank. His mind was not still, it was full. Too full. I felt the weight of what he carried. Images, messages, friends, information, opinions, all flooding him every second. Not evil in appearance, just endless. And I knew in my spirit he wasn't just distracted, he was being shaped, formed, discipled by the screen. I whispered, "What is this?" They are not addicted to content. They are being trained to abandon their own thoughts. Attention has become the altar, and their minds are the sacrifice. Then I saw it. Algorithms pulsing like tentacles, not code, spirit. Designed with precision to dull conscience, desensitize conviction, erode identity. These weren't just tools. They were temples of noise. The enemy had built a new kind of stronghold, not in governments, but in childhood. And it was working. But then hope. I saw a young girl, maybe 6, kneeling beside her bed. Her tablet was off. Her room was quiet. She whispered with trembling sincerity, "Jesus, protect my brain." That one sentence shook the spirit realm. I saw angels dispatched like lightning. I saw a shield descend over her home. I saw a ripple break into cyberspace. The prayers of children carry fire when they come from wonder. That prayer was heard louder in heaven than 1,000 polished sermons. Then Jesus showed me blueprints not for churches or campaigns, but for content. Kingdom-inspired apps, games that build character, Platforms powered by prayer, creators, coders, engineers, many of them young, designing tools that didn't distract but discipled. I saw a teenage boy building a Bible app with no ads, no noise, just scripture and stillness. I saw a former gamer now creating story-based adventures that taught forgiveness and courage. I saw parents learning to fast from media just to teach their kids how to be present again. I am raising a generation of tech prophets, code evangelists, purity pioneers. But until they grow, someone must guard the gate. That someone is you. I saw homes turned into sanctuaries, fathers repenting, mothers prophesying over breakfast, families creating new rhythms of faith, not by following trends, but by returning to the table. I saw neighborhoods transformed, not through big events, but by parents who decided that 5 minutes of silence with their child was worth more than any virtual noise. The greatest battle of this age is not for markets, it is for minds. And the front lines are not conference stages. They are bedrooms, kitchens, dinner tables. Build better altars there. I will meet them. And then he paused, letting the silence speak louder than any word. The vision lingered, the weight of it pressed into me. I realized I had built brands, companies, movements, but I had never built an altar at home. Not a literal one, a lifestyle, a space where heaven felt welcome. And now Jesus was showing me that's where the kingdom begins. As the vision of children and screens faded, I felt a fire rising, not external but internal, a holy ache. Jesus wasn't just showing me problems, he was revealing a call. Not for platforms, not for applause, but for a return to something raw, ancient and burning. Revival. But not like I had imagined it. This revival didn't begin on a stage in a stadium or through a viral event. It began in hidden places among forgotten people. I saw a man just once selling his 8-figure company, not for another venture, but to build a center for single mothers. I saw a pastor who left his church brand behind to start a community garden in the slums of Manila, teaching young boys how to plant, pray, and dream. I saw influencers delete their social media and walk away from 6-figure sponsorships to mentor foster kids in silence. No lights, no headlines. But in heaven, they were fire starters. Revival will not come through celebrity. It will come through consecration. My glory does not follow fame. It follows surrender. I saw CEOs starting prayer calls instead of strategy sessions. I saw artists laying down their fame to release worship that no label could control. I saw churches giving away money with no expectation of return. I saw boardrooms that became upper rooms. And then I saw churches once filled with noise, now empty. Not because they failed, but because the people had left the building to become the church. In the streets, in the systems, in the silence. Jesus showed me one more image burning bright in the spirit. It was a table. A simple wooden table. Around it sat no bishops, no politicians, no celebrities. Just men and women from every walk of life. Teachers, coders, ex-addicts, entrepreneurs, farmers, missionaries. They weren't talking strategy. They were listening. They weren't performing. They were repenting. Their unity wasn't built on agreement, but on obedience. And I realized that this was the council of heaven on earth. These are the ones I trust with nations. They don't seek the stage, they seek my face. And from their hidden obedience, I will rebuild what pride has broken. Then he looked at me, his eyes blazing with both love and urgency. Tell them let go of the spotlight. Embrace the furnace. Come back to your knees. Not every fire is seen by crowds. Some fires shape the course of history in secret. In that moment, I no longer wanted to return to business as usual. I didn't care about my brand, my bank accounts, or even my influence. I just wanted to burn again for real. I saw my first prayer as a boy, the one I had forgotten. Jesus, if you can use me, take everything. I had taken it back over the years, but now I gave it again. Not in emotion, in decision. Jesus came closer and placed something in my hands, not a crown, not a scroll, not a strategy, a torch. It wasn't made of wood or flame, it was made of light and conviction. And he said, go now, burn through the noise, ignite those who still have ears to hear. Revival begins in you. This is not just a story about death. It's a call to awaken before it's too late. You don't need to be rich, powerful, or famous. You just need to be willing. Willing to listen, willing to kneel, willing to carry fire in a world drowning in noise. Jesus is not looking for perfect people. He's calling the surrendered ones. The question is, will you rise? If this message stirred something in your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Pinoy Faith Stories. There are others out there waiting to be awakened, and maybe you're the spark they need.